If you've ever wondered what's really going on behind the scenes in a real estate transaction, you're in the right place. Whether it's the nail-biting negotiations, the crazy twists and turns throughout a transaction, or the moments that just make you want to pull your hair out, it's all going to be shared. I'm Brittney Frye, and I am the host of the Closing Chapters podcast. Here, we are going to talk about my career transaction by transaction since 2016. And we're also going to go through all of the golden nuggets that I've learned along the way that I would love to share with you. I want to shape your reality in real estate to a world that you can be confident, educated, and make really wonderful decisions for your financial future and build a real estate portfolio. No matter if you are a real estate investor, a first-time home buyer, or a luxury buyer, there's something to be had in this podcast. You're going to see it throughout the series that military is really my heart. That is my niche, and if you are a military buyer or seller, you will thrive listening to this podcast. So grab a seat at the closing table and let's close some chapters. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Closing Chapters. This week is a super special episode because I officially have my first guest on my podcast. I would like to welcome Amy Nelson. Amy is a fantastic stager and designer. She is phenomenal for realtors everywhere that need to learn a little bit about staging. And she and I have had this conversation before. This is actually not one of my strong suits. I started real estate in new construction world where we just kind of had vacant houses, or we had a model home that was already pre-staged for us. So I didn't really have to worry about this. And now doing resales, I think about this more and more that I need to do a better job of upping my game and really showing the benefit of staging and why it truly matters. So I'm really excited for Amy to tell us more about that. And we're going to start off right there. Most of you know, many of my clients are military. So some of these answers or questions are going to be really more military focused for agents that work in military markets so that we know how to kind of ebb and flow around some of the nuances with military life, because it's not the same as I'm just moving to the other side of town. You know, we're waiting on movers, or we're packing up our whole life and living on air mattresses for weeks at a time. It's just a weird world. So Amy, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and then really just kind of start off about why is it really important to stage a home, occupied or not? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. It's great to be on here, Brittney. I'm honored to be your first guest. That's kind of exciting. So I am based out of Western Pennsylvania and trying to reach agents, however, all over the country, because just feel like there's so much that many agents can do easily to really step up their game to make themselves stand out through the presentation of their listings. And so I do occupied and vacant home stagings in this area. And I just want to share the joy, I guess you could say, and to kind of get the word out, especially regarding occupied home staging. I think most people think about staging as being the vacant houses and a stager is bringing everything in, like you would see, say, on Home and Garden HGTV. But occupied home staging is huge and it's a real need. About 80% of the houses are homes that are lived in while they're being sold. And so, what can we do about making the presentation of those houses as good as possible to get top dollar for those houses?
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like so often, one of the things we're taught is to tell people when we come in to depersonalize, right? If it's something that you don't want people to see on the internet, then it needs to come down. But then we just have like all of these blank walls with little pinholes in them. Or, some people are great about patching, some aren't. It's not aesthetically pleasing when we have these blank spaces all of a sudden. So what do you do with an occupied home? Like, how do you tell them to depersonalize yet have it ready for pictures and showing and marketing to the world?
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's a huge question because there's so much. And of course, it always depends on every situation. With occupied homes, we try to use whatever the owners already have. And so we work within the constraints of those items. Now, sometimes in some cases, like you say, they don't have anything on the walls, or they've taken down all their family photos, which were on the walls and now they're blank. What I do, or what an occupied home stager could do in your area, is to supplement. And so sometimes we will bring in things, especially art. That is one big thing that we do have to bring in, usually to occupied homes. And so we'll supplement the things that they have and kind of blend them together with items that we bring in. So it just depends, like, because we'll go there first for a consultation, and then I know what I'll need. The homeowner has a action plan and their own homework that they need to do, in between then and when I come back. So, but I don't always have to come back. Sometimes I give them their tasks and they know exactly what to do, and off they go. So we just have to vary it depending on the situation.
So, and would you suggest whenever you're doing the consultation, should us as agents, should we be telling our owners to go ahead and start decluttering and depersonalizing, or should we just say, hey, we're going to set up this consultation, like, hold up a minute, let Amy come through and tell us what we should use and what we should take away? What's the best scenario there?
Yeah, good question, because that has happened before where sellers have already, maybe even before they started talking to an agent, let alone me, but they have already pre-packed all kinds of stuff. And I go for the consultation and I'm saying, okay, well, do you have like a big vase or a big, like get out your largest items that you have that I could look at and possibly use to stage your house. And they're like, well, they're all packed. I packed them. I'll have to go find them. So yeah, I caution people against going all out. A lot of agents will do what I call pre-staging. I should clarify that. I call it pre-staging. They might call it staging, where they think having them clear everything off every countertop and every single piece of personal decor or anything should go away. And that's like an extreme, case. Like, we don't want to go that far, but you don't want to have too much either. So there needs to be a good balance in there. But yeah, that's a good question, because packing everything away, if a stager comes, then they'll want you to get some of that back out.
I didn't even think about that until you were talking. And I was like, oh my gosh, I tell people all the time, you need to start decluttering. And I guess I'm an extremist, because that's what we've always been told, is like clear countertops everywhere. Like nothing countertops. We don't want people to get distracted. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been saying it all wrong for the longest time.
So you want to get rid of like the smaller things. There's certain things that you do want to have them pre-pack, and I would go over that in a consultation. But then there's certain things you want to leave out, because we want to draw attention to certain features of the house. We want to draw attention to the money makers. There's money walls, in every house. And so there's money makers in every house. And so those are the things that I would use the owner's items to highlight those features.
That's awesome.
I don't want to draw attention to their golf ball collection, or, the Hummels or something like that, or, all the bright red blankets and pillows on the couches. Like, we have to really be aware of psychologically what the eye is drawn to and use it to our advantage. Yeah, instead of clearing everything out, it looks more like a furniture store.
Yeah. You're so
Nothing.
right. Yeah, this is like, just thinking through my head, things that I've said to all of my clients, I'm like, this is why we're wrong. This is why we need stagers. Because, we've always been told, like, people love it if you're packed up and it looks like you're 1 foot out the door, right? Where it's like, people want to know that you're motivated to sell. They also want it to be aesthetically pleasing and feel good. So, I mean, gosh, you got to have the best of both worlds to some degree, but I think that I've been way too extreme for far too long, because that's always been, I'm like, people are like, well, if I pack everything up, then I'm like, just pick an area, pick a room, pick a garage, pick some spot and start stacking it all. They'll be okay. They'll know you're moving out.
Right.
that doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily sell the house. So, what are
Right.
some common myths or misconceptions, like kind of like what I'm saying, that like this is my perception as a realtor, what I've been taught or heard in classes. So, what are common things that you hear or know that are just wrong about staging?
Yeah. Well, and that is one, clear everything off. Another is the cost. So everyone thinks staging is for high-end luxury homes.
Mhm.
No, staging is for every house. Every house has to appeal to the buyers. And that's what staging is doing, is taking what you have to work with and connecting it and using that to highlight the features of the house to sell for as much money as that house can sell for. So if it's $130,000 house, it could sell for its top dollar 130 instead of 115. I mean, that money can make a huge difference to those people. Or if it's a $500,000 house, same thing. It's just going to make sure and ensure that the sellers get top dollar for their home. So occupied home staging is a lot less expensive than vacant. So vacant, it is going to be more expensive, and you might see that done more in higher end homes, but not always. The very first house I ever staged was $130,000 house, which had been a rental, and a real estate agent owned it, and she wanted me to stage it. She was going to sell it. And, they came in, painted and all that. And then I staged it. And now she then asked 6,000 more than what she was going for,
Cool.
and then got it because she's like, it looks so good. And that was the very first house that I had ever staged. So, and that was a vacant. And so it doesn't have to be a luxury house. They were blown away, even with just this $130,000 house, at the difference that it made. And so really I would look into, vacant staging, no matter what the price point is. My packages start at about 1,600. That's for my area, but that's like living, dining,
Yeah.
kitchen and bath
Yeah.
for a vacant, like a smallish rooms. When you
Right.
get into bigger rooms, it's going to be more, but might not be as much as what people think it is. But occupied homes, a consultation is a few $100s,
Yeah.
but
Well,
the rate of return on that is huge.
right. Well, and even
So
at that like $1,600 mark and up, if we're sitting on the market for more than a month at a time, right, that's a mortgage payment potentially, you
yeah,
know? So what's the
it is.
motivation? Like, do we need to sell, or are we taking it
Mhm.
off the market? I mean, that's really the question, right? If we don't have motivation to sell and do it the right way the first time, then
Oh,
there's different conversations to be had there. So I think
no.
that's really eye-opening, because I definitely need to be implementing this more into my own personal business. It's not something that's really been big. But the
Hmm.
other big part about that is because in the military world, we naturally expect this ebb and flow, that people are going to come in and come out, and everything's going to sell itself eventually, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes time is of the essence versus, necessarily the top dollar or certain terms. So, with that said, how do we actually sell this to military families that particularly are pinching pennies? There's a lot of that are moving every 2 years, and that cost is huge. So,
Right.
and they know that the house will sell, but how do we explain to them, like, hey, we can actually get you more, and this really is worth it? Like, if your time is money, money is money, it all adds up.
Hmm.
How can us as realtors really sell staging to military clients?
Hmm. I mean, and really, that's a good question for any agent in area, including military. But because the military, they move more frequently, it could be that the houses see all kinds of people, in and out frequently. Things get dinged up when you go moving in, moving out, even if you're being careful.
No, our
They might not have
furniture is
lived.
usually trash. Military people do not buy nice furniture until after we get out of the military because of that solely. So you are
Right.
100%
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not going to probably purchase big, heavy furniture because you have to move it. So it might be cheaper or little wobbly, after being moved so many times. And like you say, you just don't want to put the money into it till later, or you haven't lived there that long to really develop like a cohesive design style in the house, or, with your own belongings. And so, so I would first look at the house itself and how that presents, and fix little things like little repairs, like screen that's ripped or trim that's chipped up. I'm going to be putting my house on the market soon, my personal house. And I've been spending a lot of time like looking at my trim, because I'm like, oh, it's so bad. I hadn't really noticed. And so I'm running around, I match the paint, so I know what white paint it is. And I'm running around like repainting and touching up, and it makes a huge difference. Things that are banged up and like kind of beaten up a little, like just touch it up with paint. Even a wall or two, you don't have to do the whole room, but sometimes a wall or two you might need to paint. And so those are really key things that affects that first impression, more so than even like your furniture and things like that, because people do want to see that the house is well maintained and taken care of. If it's not, then they're going to think, well, what else is wrong with this house? Do you ever change the furnace filter? Or, probably not, So you want to show that you do take care of the house first and foremost. But then I would focus on like the main rooms, say like your living room, your kitchen, and your master bedroom, because those are the ones that are the most important to buyers.
Okay.
The National Association of Realtors has done a lot of studies on staging. They have a profile of home staging report that they put out every 2 years. In there, they talk quite a bit about those rooms that are most important to buyers. And so I would focus on those rooms if you only have a limited time and or budget. Even just something like get a new white comforter. Again, just fix things in the kitchen, like that loose handle, the hinges that are coming off the door because your kid steps on it all the time to get to the cookie jar. And, those things that really happen in real life. Make sure your light bulbs all match. If it's a really outdated light, like go to Home Depot and get a $50 one that's going to be a little more updated, because those things are little, but they make a big difference. The best way to show you the difference would be some photos that show like the lived-in look compared to a house that's ready to sell and it's like staged. I have a lot on my website, so I can give you my website address at the end, but I have a lot of those, and also my social media, just to show people the difference that it makes.
I love seeing your before and afters. They're so cool. And
you
do a great job. I mean, it's so neat to see the same furniture in two different perspectives on what you take away and what you keep. I think my perception of staging has always just been that things are brought in, like that you
right
have to bring a bunch in. So it is really neat.
Well, and really in an occupied home, it's more like we take things out.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier about, clearing counters or not, but there's a balance. But oftentimes occupied homes, there's just too much furniture. And so, that's a big thing too, that we recommend. It's just like, okay, if you can do without this cabinet, can you move it out? I would recommend you move out this chair. So there's just some different things that we can do like that. Sometimes people end up with too much furniture. That might not be in your case with military.
Yeah, it's hit or miss. Sometimes we don't know what we're getting at each house, and every area costs different, right? So I mean, sometimes you go from a really big house to half the size, and you're right, we have way too much stuff. You said something about just the things that are normal life, like living normal life. Well, if we're selling a house when we're occupied, we are still living life in there. And you mentioned kids stepping up on handles, but for all of the kids stuff, do you have any like great quick tips? Like if we have, high chair, kids' toys, like how should we put that stuff away and make it aesthetically pleasing and still have it accessible for our day-to-day lives? Do you have any quick tips on what we should do there?
So probably half the people that I stage houses for have young kids. Myself have moved a number of times with young kids. So there's a number of things that we can do. First of all is just reduce the amount of toys that they're going to have just for this month or two time period. I guarantee you can probably pack 3/4 of their toys and they don't notice it. Okay. Or if they do, those are going to be opened again at the new house. Is going to be this exciting thing. So I would just really limit those toys and then try to keep them contained to one room where you have some baskets and you can put them in there, or the kids can put them in there at the end of the day. So just kind of keep up with it. I also tell families to have what I call traveling bins. And that's just like some laundry baskets that you have around the house in different rooms. And so then if you are having a showing that's going to be coming up, like, in 3 hours, they call and, oh, they're in town. Can they come? You just take whatever clutter you have around the house, throw them in the laundry bins and put them in the car. Your dogs, your cats also, they need to go with you during showings. You had mentioned something about things like high chairs, and like you need those every day.
Right.
It's not like you can pack it up and store it in the garage, right? So things like that are things that I say need to do a disappearing act for photos and for showings. That a high chair, for example, would be a good example of that. We don't want it in photos. We don't want it in showings. Not that we don't like the idea that there's little kids there, like everyone gets that.
Yeah.
But it ruins the buyer's mental process that they're going through as they're coming into the house. Mm-hmm. They're coming in so excited to see this as their own house. They want to see themselves living there. So they may or may not have kids that have high chairs. We don't want anything to disrupt that flow. So some of those things that we already talked about it disrupts that flow, like too much stuff or not enough, or furniture that they have to navigate around. It's not clean, or, things like that. We don't want to disrupt the buyer's mental flow process. So those things are disappearing acts. Also, like dog or cat food, kitty litters, like things like that. They need to do disappearing acts during photos and during showings as much as possible.
Do you think like a corner in the garage is kind of acceptable? Like to have a shelf or an area in the garage, that's okay, just get out of the immediate house area? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, some people might get storage units, but honestly, most of the people I stage for, as they're pre-packing things, they're putting in the garage. Okay. I mean, that's just, it's real life. Everyone knows that you're packing and you're moving. So people think, well, then it's okay that I have boxes all over the living room. No, it's not, because that's part of the buyers are coming in. They want to see it as theirs. Mm-hmm. So your boxes in there, that's going to be disrupting their momentum.
Right. Yeah. I try to tell people it's like your house is now a product. It's a product on a shelf, it's no longer your own. So you can't be offended by things that you need to do to it. If you need to change something, like you need to think what makes the packaging look fancy. Right. And you're right that's the icing on the cake. For realtors, what's the difference for us, when we're considering whether we're going to market staging or suggest it to our clients? Why should we or shouldn't we have this in our portfolio? Why is it so important for us to know more about staging capabilities for our listings?
Yeah. So staging is one of those things that it's an investment. It's an investment that's going to pay back big returns. Statistically, they show that over and over and over again. There's a lot of statistics that show that they sell faster, they sell for more money than compared to homes that are not staged. But it's a whole thing, like being able to tell a seller, I offer more because I include how your house is going to be presented to the market. And this is what I do. That's huge compared to an agent who, well, let's see, I'll post your house on social media. I'll put a sign in the front yard, okay, everyone does that.
Right.
There's a book called Ninja Selling. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's for real estate agents. Larry Kendall is the author, but he talks in there about, he did this study and said that most people think that all agents do the same thing. Okay. All agents, they put it on the MLS, they take pictures, they put a sign in my yard, they put it on social media. Okay. So most everyone thinks that they do the same thing. So how do they pick their agent. And agents say, well, they pick probably on price, like I have a lower commission or right. But no, he found that 85% of those people say they would actually pay more if they knew they were going to get more.
Okay.
And so, no, sellers don't pick only on price. No, there are some that do. But if you can show that you're going to add more value, 85% of those people will actually pick agents that provide more value, even though you might have a higher commission, because they understand that you're going to be doing more for them. So how your house is presented, it's, all the marketing that you do, it's kind of not worth it if you're just taking lousy photos,
right,
or no one can really tell, like, what is that? A picture of a corner of a room, or like, what is that? Like, how is that inspiring me as a buyer? So if those photos aren't of things that are capturing my attention,
right,
then it's kind of wasted on me. Like, there's so much I could say about this whole thing but just using staging to get more listings by adding that value is huge. And there's so many different ways, we can approach that. I think if agents can start seeing it as the marketing is all part of presentation, and actually kind of have this whole diamond thing that puts all marketing and preparation and presentation and your photos, put all that into this diamond diagram.
yeah,
It's all really about how your house is presented. I think the part that a lot of agents forget, they want to tell sellers, well, I communicate well, I'm responsive, I know, a lot of vendors. I mean, that's all great, and those things are important,
right,
but the key that they really need to focus on, and this is what the seller is looking for, is how are you going to connect my house to buyers that really want to see my house? And so, we connect them through the presentation. Like, how is that house presented to the market?
yeah,
What do buyers want? And how can we take what buyers want and bring that into your house?
that's very
So how do you reach buyers? It's all about how we're going to present the house to the buyer.
right. Well, and
So,
I mean, to your point, you're right. That everything you said was like we're all talking about what we have to offer. We're not actually talking about our clients or their property. So I think we've got to do a better job of that, of actually saying, this is what your property needs. This is how I can market your property. This is how I get your property to the most, not what I'm doing for you. What's your property going to do? Like, what are we doing for the property to get it to the market? But I also feel like too, I imagine people that are professional stagers probably have a little bit of a following, right? So if that's such another like one up for realtors to be connected with another professional that's going to help push out stuff for us, because if you're excited about a project you got to do, then you're going to be totally happy to show off my listing because you had your touch on it.
Yep.
So if you're local and you have a reach, then that is like even further than my simple social media and MLS. So that's just such another great perspective of like professional, like we are able to support each other and continue to spread out that listing far and wide in that local area. So that is such a big point that we have to remind our sellers what they need for their property, not who we are as a person. I mean, that you're right, there's a time and place for that, but our job is to sell the house, not to necessarily sell ourselves. So I love that. And I think the other thing that I'm really curious about, I have noticed a lot of people that will go back and stage after a property's been on the market for a while, or agents that have vacant properties and they'll go back and stage after it's been on the market for a while. But the days on market have already passed. So I feel like it's probably a situation where somebody was like really nervous or intimidated, or was like, oh, I don't want to take that step yet. What have you seen? I mean, obviously once it gets staged, it probably does move pretty fast. Or if it changes hands to a new agent that stages it, it probably goes overnight. And all of a sudden the seller thinks it's the agent when really it was the fact that they got it staged. How do we show like, hey, let's limit this. Like, whether you think the house is going to go fast or not, this is such a benefit to you. Like, don't let it be intimidating. It can be a very simple and easy process. I'm a human just like you know, like, I'm friendly. I'm going to come in. We're going to do this stuff and it's not going to be overwhelming. How do we
Right.
reassure them, you know, like, of those things?
First of all, when I meet and talk to agents, I always explain to them that, like, I'll talk to their sellers ahead of time if they, want me to, about the whole idea of staging and what that would mean and what my process looks like. I also have slides that I send out ahead of time to the sellers, and I always copy the agents, but it's like things to expect, maybe what to do ahead of time. If you want to do something, you can do XYZ, please don't do ABC, like back too much stuff. So yes, so those things help with the whole process. Sometimes sellers or maybe the agent, they want to wait and say, well, let's see how it does. When that comes up, I kind of steer them away from that, not just because I want the business or something, but because statistically, 5 times more people will see your listing on the very first day it's listed than any other time. So Redfin did a study on this. So 5 times more the first day and 2 times more the first week.
Okay.
After that, it goes down considerably. So you have to be ready on day 1. Otherwise, you're really, really missing the big window. Now, sometimes, like you said, people will switch agents. It's been on the market a long time. If that's the case, because that happens a lot, where then that new agent will call in a stager, like, we need to do something. So if that is the case, the house really has to be markedly different. It has to be a total refresh. And it's not just because I think it should, it's because buyers have already seen that house.
Right.
So buyers who are flipping through listings that are, say, in their price range, they're going to see that house and like, oh yeah, I already looked at it. Swipe by. So they don't know that the inside looks different. They don't know that maybe now the pictures are better, or my gosh, yeah, it looks amazing now. Like, I couldn't envision that before.
Yeah.
They're not going to click into the house because in their mind, they've already seen it and they already crossed it off their list.
Right. So we can usually switch out those photos. If we did get it staged and we had a great interior photo, that'd be the first thing I'd be doing. I would not have an exterior photo anymore as that main photo. I would put it as an interior, because you're right, it might look completely different and trip them up a little bit. They might go, oh my gosh, I haven't seen this, or this looks familiar, but this isn't what I saw before.
Right. Yep. Yeah. What house is this?
Yeah.
Or even an exterior photo that's from a different angle. Like, it has to be something different. I've also seen people put in the listing itself new photos or, new look. Then as a stager or as an agent, if you're doing your own occupied staging, it needs to look markedly different. When I say staging too, I'm not like, it's not just tidy up because your mother-in-law is visiting, but like those things that we talked about earlier, taking out furniture pieces and some items, keeping other certain items. But when it's relisted and it has to have that new fresh look, I go in and on purpose totally rearrange the house. So, I mean, things will go from room to room, this couch and that, we'll swap chairs, still using as much of possible of what they have, but it has to look different in order to get attention online. So that's why hitting the market hard and ready on day 1 is so important. I've also seen agents who they'll just show the exterior photo first and no other photos, but you're missing out on the opportunity for a lot of eyes to get on that property. I would say it's better to wait until you have it all and everything's ready to go and then list.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I always tell that is a requirement for my listings, is to have professional photos in hand before I will put it online. Not only that, but the multiple listing systems syndicate out to so many other websites. And the first time it goes out, you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to copy and paste correctly. When you start switching things over, and
Yeah.
back, it's a lot better now than it was a handful of years
Mhm.
ago. But there used to be a lot of times where the
Yep.
wrong pictures would get on the wrong listings and stuff. So
Yep.
I'm very particular about that for that aspect. But before we keep talking, I'm like, I can't believe myself and my business. I've been so particular about that. I'm adamant about professional photography. So why wouldn't I be adamant about having a home stager come in and make sure that that photography is actually worth the money? Like, why am I paying a
Mhm.
photographer if the house is not spruced up and looking marketable? Because they can do
Mhm.
wonders, but they're not a magician. They can't rearrange and declutter and take away some of the things that people are going to focus on that they
Yep.
shouldn't. This has been super eye-opening to me because so long in my business, I've always required professional photography. And I really feel like these are hand in hand. It's a package deal. I mean, it really makes a lot of sense now that if you're going to require one, you should require the other to some
Yeah.
fashion. It
Yeah,
makes
they
no
go
sense
hand
to
in
pay for
hand.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It
So,
goes hand in hand. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
I never really thought about it that way. I honestly have not
mm,
ever put a lot of weight into staging, and this has totally changed my perspective of how I need to be
good.
looking at things. Yeah, it's been great. So I am on your social media and I see all of your beautiful pictures and all of the information that you share, which is why I was so intrigued on talking more with you. But how can
Yeah.
everybody else find you? How can other real estate agents find you? And also, I've asked you this before, but just so that the World Wide Web knows, every once in a blue moon, you will do virtual meetings, correct? That's like a thing
Mhm.
that we can kind of do a quick virtual consultation, or
Yep.
you also have some other online options to be able to connect with you, right?
Right. Yes. So, okay, that's a lot. I hope I can remember everything.
I'm so sorry. I
So the online,
get it all out.
yeah, the online services first, I'll address. Yes, I do Zoom consultations. Now, my in-person consultations are up to 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not like walk through and I say, oh, yeah, this is good. No, it's very in depth, but also the same on Zoom. We can do the same on Zoom. So, consultations can be done that way. Social media, everything is, my handle is Home Transformations Staging.
Okay.
So, that's on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's my name, Amy K. Nelson.
Okay.
My website is the same. It's Home Transformation Staging.
Okay.
I also have on my website, if agents are interested at all, I have a free download there that is about, as they're presenting an occupied house, so 5 secrets, that all stagers can do. And some of them we talked about here, but some we didn't. There's a download there, and I'm planning some more things for agents in the future. So if they get on my email list, they can hear more about it. It's strategies that they can use, and not just your normal run-of-the-mill stuff that you can find. This is very specific and a lot more actionable than just some general Googled stuff. So I'd love to connect with people. Agents, let me know like what you need. I do like to find out like what are the biggest things that you struggle with, because those are the things that I can address as far as presentation of an occupied home goes.
Yeah, no, I think lack of knowledge is a huge part, at least on my behalf. And I'm not quite sure where we get all of these misconceived notions, but I mean, a lot of the things that we've talked about today are literally drilled into our head. I've been in real estate for almost a decade, and that's always what we have heard. And you hear everywhere you go around, and you're talking to all the people that mentor you in the business. So I think we've got to start just pushing out the new information that applies to right now. I think that's awesome. And you are so right. Actionable was on the tip of my tongue when you were saying that. Your emails that you send out always have really good tips that you can implement, which is so important. I think for realtors, especially, a lot of our work and our world, there's nothing tangible that we can hold on to or know that we're actually doing something. So the fact that we can with your information, it's like literally something we can touch and hold and change, or put in an ABC format, is so helpful for our
Mhm.
business. And it's another great way just to make us look good if we're taking your information and putting it as a part of our listing presentation. So thank you for that. I will link all of your stuff below too in the show notes. But if you have not, go ahead and go on over to Amy Nelson, to all of her social medias, to her website. And she is definitely a gem and a wealth of knowledge. Even if you just want to look at pretty pictures, you will absolutely love the before and afters. And then you will end up staying and diving through for more. So thank you, Amy, for being on with me today and being my first official guest again. I am so excited.
Yay!
I can't wait to hear more and share more about your staging business.